Thank you for joining me. In this video, I'm going to be talking about chapters 16 to 20 of the Kite Runner. The videos for the other chapters are in the description box below. And this video is aimed mainly at A-level students studying the novel as part of their English literature qualification, but it might also be useful if you're studying the novel for other courses or in fact just reading the novel for pleasure. So, chapter 16, we're moving now into the middle or 2/3 of the way through the novel. And chapter 16, we have to remember that the narrative perspective changes. So the narrator in this chapter is not Amir, it actually changes to Rahim Khan. And that allows Hosseini to, I suppose, write fluently all of Rahim Khan's information. And you can see from these bullet points, these square boxes, that we actually learn an awful lot from Rahim Khan in this chapter in terms of Hassan and Ali since we last saw them. So I'm not going to read them all out. You can see them here, all the things that we learn. We learn about Sanyabar coming back. We learn about Sorab. We learn about Hassan getting married and having a stillborn daughter. We learn about why Hassan came back to the mansion to look after it, and how Hassan reacted to Baba's death and the news of Baba's death. Of course, we also know that Hassan can now read and write, and Sorab can do the same. And in a kind of a generation later, Hassan and Sorab can also go kite running. So we learn an awful lot about Hassan and Sorab and his life since the last time we saw him, which was at the end of chapter 9, in fact. So an awful lot has happened. One of the things that we get told at the end of the chapter is when the Taliban took control in 1996. We get told about Hassan's reaction to that, and almost as if the colour kind of drained from his face. Of course, that's because he's a Hazara and he knows the Taliban are mainly Pashtuns. So the treatment of the Hazaras at the hands of the Taliban is also reinforced in the Mazar-i-Sharif massacre in 1998, which is referred to here. So it goes to show how the Taliban is using violence as a way to achieve their utopia. Sanyabar does come back to seek redemption from her son, and she manages to do so. And Rahim Khan also uses the phrase, "I miss him terribly," which implies that Hassan and Sorab are no longer around, although we have to wait until the next chapter to understand why that may be. We also get told in this chapter that the Taliban banned kite flying, which emphasises the change to the country, that even trivial things like that are subject to banning and restrictions. Chapter 17 is again important. There are two revelations in this chapter. The first is that Hassan is dead, as is Fazana. The reason for that is the Taliban grew suspicious as to why a Hazara was living in a Pashtun mansion. They, in effect, killed Hassan, despite Hassan trying to tell the truth, the fact that he was looking after the house. And the Taliban then lied and said it was self-defense, which again goes to show how the Taliban can rule with impunity, because nobody dare question them. So Hassan is executed, he's killed, as is his wife. And that's significant because, of course, it means that Hassan again is sacrificial, but it also means that Amir cannot seek redemption directly from Hassan anymore. And also that makes Sorab an orphan. And that, of course, is important because the second half of this novel is about Amir trying to find that child. In a letter that Hassan writes, again showing that he can now read and write, it tells us about the state of Afghanistan, how dystopian it is, but it also goes to show Hassan's loyalty, because despite everything, he finishes the letter by saying, "And I dream that someday you will return to Kabul, where you will find an old faithful friend waiting for you." Of course, that was not going to happen. Amir was never going to go back because he had set up a new life in America and was trying to repress the past, but for this phone call that Rahim Khan rang in chapter 14 or chapter 1. The second revelation is that Hassan is actually Amir's half-brother, because Baba was Hassan's father. And this makes sense because we then look back at Baba's behaviour earlier on in the novel, and it makes sense because he was, by hook or by crook, treating both boys quite equally. That didn't necessarily make sense to us at the time, but it now makes sense. So Amir actually storms out of the apartment angrily because he feels like he has been prevented from knowing the truth. And he's probably very angry with himself because he didn't just betray a best friend, he betrayed his half-brother. And obviously Hassan therefore was another blood relative when Amir doesn't have many at all left. And because Hassan is dead, it means that Amir can't re-engage with Hassan in a brotherly way because it's too late. He spent too long in America trying to run away from the past. This, of course, means that because Ali was sterile, it means that he could not have been Hassan's father, and therefore Baba had sex with Sanyabar behind Ali's back, meaning just like Amir betrayed Hassan, Baba has betrayed Ali. So it's cyclical, as we've said in previous videos. The chapter ends with Rahim Khan asking Amir to find Sorab, and he initially refuses, saying that he could pay somebody to do it. And that annoys Rahim Khan because he wants Amir to be a bit braver than that. Of course, Sorab is not just a Hazara child somewhere in Afghanistan. Sorab is now his half-nephew, and that gives a whole different way or a whole different impetus to finding this child. The letter in this chapter allows us to hear Hassan's voice for the first time. It's a break again from Amir's biased homodiegetic perspective. The tone is also deeply respectful. Rahim Khan in this chapter is elevated to a character of knowledge because he knows more than Amir does about the past and what's happened to Hassan and Ali since we last saw them. And Rahim Khan recalls Baba's words, which is, a boy who can't stand up for himself becomes a man who can't stand up for anything. Well, because he's trying to imply that Amir's lack of courage is what's stopping him from agreeing to find Sorab. So this chapter has two main revelations, or two key bombshells in it, which completely readjusts the novel and also how we perceive the past events as well. Chapter 18 is relatively short. It's based on Amir sitting in a cafe looking at the Polaroid picture of Hassan having a cup of coffee. And he's basically contemplating the past now. He's seeing Baba as a hypocrite. Baba said that the worst thing is theft, and yet he accuses Baba of preventing him from knowing he had a brother, so in effect stealing his brother from him, and also stealing Ali's honour. He also comes to the conclusion that Amir and Baba are kind of more alike than ever thought before, because both have betrayed their closest friends. And by the end of this chapter, Amir comes back to Rahim Khan and eventually says, okay, I will go and find Sorab. Not just for Rahim Khan's peace of mind, but also for Amir's peace of mind, because there's a real sense that finding this child will end this cycle of betrayal and deceit and injustice that seems to have corrupted the generations before. Rahim Khan, of course, lied and said that there were the Caldwells, who were an American couple, who would look after Sorab once Amir had found him. Of course, that later turns out to be a lie because those Caldwells don't even exist. So Rahim Khan, perhaps slightly manipulative, but also giving Amir the opportunity, perhaps, to make things good again, and to show some courage. Interestingly, when Amir is sat at that cafe having a cup of tea or coffee, he notices walnut-sized brass balls between the legs of the tables, and of course that's exactly what Sorab uses to shoot out Asef's eye in the fight scene in the kind of the last bit of the novel. Chapter 19 makes this novel turn into a quest narrative, and a quest narrative is a story that's motivated by a character journeying to find something. Literally, that is finding a child, but metaphorically, it's also to seek redemption and atonement for unatoned sins. So this part of the novel turns into a quest narrative, a journey to find something. And of course, the journey is, he's back in Afghanistan now, so he's back in his home territory where the wrongs of the past took place. Amir enlists the help of Farid as almost like a driver, and Farid initially is quite resentful of Amir because he accuses Amir of being a bit of a tourist in his own country in terms of leaving at the first sign of trouble. Later on, though, Farid does thaw towards Amir when he realises the reality of why Amir is there. Amir spends the night in Farid's brother's home, who's called Wahid, with his children, and the children have to go hungry because Wahid gives Amir the food, as is polite custom. Amir thinks that the children keep looking at his wristwatch, so he gives them a present of the wristwatch. In fact, they're looking at the food he's eating because they're hungry. So that's the reality of that situation. And Farid agrees to help Amir find Sorab, which is convenient for this novel and this quest. Amir has a nightmare inspired by Hassan's execution. And interestingly, harking back to chapter 9, Amir again leaves something else under a mattress, money under a mattress, but this time it's for good intentions, as to say thank you. So there's a sense here that he's already beginning to make amends for some past errors. Finally, in this video, chapter 20. It is a good chapter to use if you wanted to talk about the juxtaposition between Afghanistan as it's presented before war and after or during war. So the minor sentence, rubble and beggars, just sums up perfectly how Afghanistan and Kabul has changed because of the impact of not just the Taliban but also civil war and the Soviets. Kabul is personified as an old faithful friend seeing that life hadn't been too good to him, that he'd become homeless and destitute. So Kabul has shown the consequences of totalitarian regime. In this chapter, they're kind of travelling around Kabul, and it's the first thing that they do is they come across some Taliban officials, and because Amir is having to wear a fake beard, the description is unadulterated fear where flesh suddenly shrunk against my bones, goes to show the draconian force that the Taliban have on citizens and the paranoia that this could cause. You can have fear, violence with impunity. Amir meets Dr. Razil, which was his mother's old colleague at the university, and we do find some minor details about Sophia, but we never see the beggar again. And I think the most important or the most significant thing about this chapter is the visit to the orphanage at the end, where Zaman, who's the orphanage director, it's implied that he's selling children to the Taliban, but of course that's not the case. The Taliban are supplying the orphanage with food, and in exchange for that they want children probably to sexually abuse. And Zaman says if he prevents the Taliban from having one child, the Taliban will take 10. So he can't win. Because of this, Farid fights Zaman because he's a bit hot-headed. And it actually materialises that Zaman has put all his life savings into the orphanage and sacrificed perhaps his own safety and comfort for other people's children. The quote, children who have lost their childhood, is quite significant because it again sums up the effect of war and extremist regimes on innocence, so the corruption of innocence there. And finally, the orphanage director, Zaman, says you need to go to the Ghazi Stadium, which is the next chapter, to help find Sohrab. Sohrab was at the orphanage. He's been taken since, though, so he's not there now. And the description of Zaman putting on his broken glasses just reinforces a sense of hopelessness. He obviously can't go to an optician's to get some new ones, so it's hopeless. They have to make do with this terrible situation. So this part of the novel is important because we understand some things that we didn't know before, like what's happened to Hassan and Ali, and it also turns into this quest narrative to find Sohrab, which then of course enables Amir to not only find his half-nephew, but also to atone for past sins. So hopefully that has been useful to you, and thank you very much for watching.